Hello, everyone. This is Sinead Willihan on July 17th, 2021, and we're here with another wonderful interview for you. This tonight is another special event regarding China and Chinese ufology. There's a great deal going on over there. It doesn't often get out to us because of control the Chinese government has and other issues, stigma, and so on. But tonight we have a very, very important guest and also his translator, who's becoming equally important, it seems. She's gaining her own voice in the community. So we are here to interview Mr. Jinping Zhang, or Zhang, sorry, I should be pronouncing it better. He is a very famous ufologist, UFO researcher in China. He has been known for investigating UFO crashes, believe it or not. He is in contact with the Chinese government. He is in contact with beings who are from Canis Major, the Canis Major constellation. He gets information from them and he's able to share it with other people in the community. So there is a lot of exciting information that's going to come from him. It is a pleasure and an honor to have him here with us today. And we also have with us his translator, Amy. She is also a personality in the field. We're going to be doing a different interview with her, so I won't go too far into that right now. She's serving as translator tonight, but I just wanted to give her that recognition. So Mr. Zhang and Amy, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. It is really an honor to have you here.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here. And let me translate first. 张老师他们讲到，首先介绍了一下您，就是您是在这个 UFO 研究领域非常知名的一个研究者，专门研究这个坠毁的事件，以及和中国的政府有一个很好的联系。另外，您就是主要是和东升星球的人也有一个直接联系，会提供非常多非常有趣的信息啊。大概就是对您一个介绍。另外，欢迎您来到这里。
谢谢你们啊，欢迎朋友们，欢迎朋友们，
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. So I thought that we could start right away with your origin story. You know, that's usually a good place to begin. Grant and I are both very curious. Grant is here too. Sorry, everyone, I should mention that, but he's having technology issues, so he's just going to jump in when he's able to. I'm going to be leading the interview tonight. So if you could ask Mr. Zhang, please, Amy, what is his origin story? What led him into this field to begin with? Because it is certainly not a conventional one in China. It's not one that is encouraged in China. And, you know, it certainly has its risks, but he seems to be so dedicated to this field and to really revealing what's going on in ufology in China. I'm very curious, and so is Grant, to find out, you know, what is driving him. So how did he get on this path? How did his story begin?
Sure. 那张老师就他首先想要问一些关于 So back in the third year of my junior high school in China, I read a magazine called UFO Discovery, something like that. So in 1980s, the whole decades, the magazine is about covered some sightings and also some crashes and experiences in the UFO community. And back then, the magazine didn't cover much about sightings or experiences in China. It's mostly about cases in other countries outside China. So in the early days, I started to become very interested, third year of my junior high. I become interested, and later I went to Beijing to further my studies with the increasing of my knowledge in this field. And also there's a very public craze about UFO back in 1980, after 1980s. So it's a very public interest about UFOs. I deepened my interest in this community and started to do research on these topics. And later I joined some organizations to study, to investigate some sightings and also to explore some of the topics from different series perspectives, to study different series about UFOs. And that's how it started, just because I'm interested in anything that's mystery, mystery.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so curiosity, a combination of curiosities and personal experiences, and then also public events that motivated him or validated his experience to continue on the path. So how did he get to the point that he is now? Because he really has become quite public and is in a very interesting position, right? Where he's communicating with the Chinese government and also with these beings from Canis Major and kind of delivering information back and forth, if I'm not mistaken. I wanted to ask him about that aspect of it. How did he get to a point where he was able to be in a position to have that kind of dual relationship on both sides like that. That's quite an amazing position to be in. Yeah.
Okay. After looking back, I actually realized they were aliens, not at the beginning, because I had contact with Candace Major, actually turned out to be Syrian people, Syrian aliens. I didn't really expect they are aliens. I just thought they were some teachers and some masters from the invisible world, and I talked to them. So it's actually the second year after I started my research on UFO. I think it's 1991. I've been studying this for 30 years till now, and it's the second year of my study. I started to gradually realize they were like aliens. I started to channel messages from them back then, but I didn't really know what was really going on. So I asked these teachers about my life, about technology. I even invited them to mitigate some earthquakes. So I anticipated some earthquakes going to happen in 1995 in Tokyo, and then I asked them to mitigate the effects of the earthquake. So actually, my contacts started right before I started my interest in UFO community, but I didn't really realize that already happened. So I channel information with them. It's like channeling process. I interacted with them, but I didn't realize that until between like 1991 to 2012. So among all these years, I gradually started to realize they were not gods or anything else. They were just aliens. That's all.
所以说现在想来哈，这个不。
Okay, so it's not just my personal interest, it's actually the arrangement or the plan by the aliens. Somehow they have had a plan for future connections that connected everything already when right before it happened, everything is already connected and planned. So the important thing is that I connected with them, and also they kind of helped me to change myself or change other people's as well. So when it all started, it wasn't just out of curiosity, but also because of their plan. And because of their plan, I have devoted much of my time, effort, and money into this community. And I would say that aliens did play a very important role in the whole thing. They were like directors of the movie or something.
Wow. Okay. So I just want to ask, if he can tell us, what is his memory of the first time that this contact occurred? And can he describe, how old was he? It sounds like he was in high school or he was quite young. So, how old was he and where was he and how did it happen? Like, did they appear before him? Did he hear a voice? What was the experience and what was that like for him? If he can detail that for us.
Sure. So when I started the investigation in the UFO community, at first I only thought that the contact can only happen physically, but later it turned out to be untrue. Actually, the contact can happen on a spiritual level. So when people ask me whether you have contacted aliens at first, in the very beginning, I will shake my head. I will say no. But it turned out I've been contacting them for a long time because sometimes you can't really see them physically, but you can get information from them. So looking back, I only realized that when I was starting from 1991, I was 22 years old. I think that happened in that year when I was studying in Beijing, and I started to get information basically through a channeler. It's not really myself. I started to get information from them, but through a channeler, and it's a lady. And lady helped me to channel information from these aliens. So I didn't really have face-to-face contact with these aliens. I just get information from them. So it's not really a physical contact. It just, on a spiritual level happened on a spiritual level.
Okay, interesting. And actually that helps me jump into the next question, which is that, we're aware that in China, the idea of spirituality and the idea of religion is very tightly managed, right? And there's a very specific way that people are supposed to practice either one of those things. There's not a lot of freedom. So it was interesting to me earlier when he said, maybe about 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, prior to me asking that last question, when he said, oh, I had just assumed that I was receiving guidance from the invisible world, and he said it to me, it came across as if he was just casually assuming that there was this invisible world. So I'm wondering, where did that come from? Because that sounds like he already has this sense of spirituality that doesn't come from what is currently being prescribed in China, but was kind of already a bit more esoteric for him, just on his own. So I'm wondering where that sense came from. He was just like, oh, there's just teachers in the invisible world, and then later on realized that they were aliens, but was still just comfortable with his idea that he was receiving teachings from invisible people in an invisible world. So what made him comfortable with that idea? Where did that concept come from for him?
This might be very hard to explain because maybe I already had a concept somehow, like there will be some intelligent life forms that are more like smarter than us, smarter than human beings, and more intelligent than human beings. Maybe I already had that concept already, but after all these years of UFO investigation, I was more focused on like the physical evidence of UFO contact. So I didn't really take my spiritual contact very seriously, or I didn't even realize that contact at all. But after all these years of investigation, after gradual realization, I realized that this is spiritual contact, the beings from the invisible world, is very, very important, or even more important from other contacts. That's all.
Well, I mean, we absolutely are in agreement with you about that. Grant and I both feel that it's definitely not a physical issue. It may be appearing that way or presenting itself to be as if it is that way, but it is not. It is so obviously, more and more obviously, at least to us, a spiritual issue that is about consciousness. So before we get into that, because we do want to ask him what his thoughts are on the issue of consciousness and ET contact specifically, I do want to just focus a little bit on the physical aspect of it, just in terms of asking him his opinion on the recent UAP report that the United States government put out, the one that everyone was eagerly waiting for. And, many people who are leaders in the community were not that impressed with the report. Other people loved it. So we're curious what he thinks about that report specifically.
Okay, so there are two questions, right? One on consciousness in the ET. Okay, so good. Okay. About the UAP reports, I think the United States government kind of is forced to release information on this topic, because this report, I remember, is tied to the 2.3 trillion, if I remember correctly, budget bill, right? So they were kind of forced to do this thing, to release report, because the time is here, and there's nothing they can do to postpone that. So it's quite a major, I personally think it's a quite major progress for US government, because they released 144 cases, and only one case, 1%, which is 1% of the 144 cases, is misidentified, they said. So both the Air Force and Navy, all these departments, all these organizations, they use different technology like infrared, all the kinds of images to kind of identify these cases as cases that can not be explained. So relatively, I think it's quite a big progress compared to 1969, the project Blue Book project, because back then 12,168 cases were like reported by the projects, but 701 cases were mentioned to be has been excluded outside the UFO possibility. So like 5% of the cases had been mentioned as misidentified. So it's quite a progress for US government to say so in the recent UAP report. And also some high level government officials said that kind of started a conversation between the public or in the government that this flying aircraft could be, technology that is outside this world. It could be like 200 years or 1,000 years away or more advanced than our current civilization. They didn't really say that very clearly or abruptly. They just kind of hinted the possibility of that. So they really started a conversation, good conversation. Also in China, we have a similar term like UAP, something like UAS, like identified aerial situation, something like that. We also had similar discussions and coverage about this UAP reports. And we all say it's a very big progress for US government to release this report. That's all.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much for that answer. And I'm also going to jump over to, from what you just said, to the fact that almost around the same time as the report was released, Grant has just reminded me of this in our chat here, almost around the same time that UA report was released, there was a video taken of a humongous black triangle hovering over Shanghai, kind of in a cloudy sky. The clouds are seen below the black triangle. The person who's taking the video pans around and shows us that it's occurring below or above Shanghai. So Xiao Ma, who we spoke with yesterday, was saying that she feels that would be a very difficult video to fake. And we wanted to ask you what you thought, Mr. Zhang, of the recent videos that have come out. Let's just use the recent videos as an example. Do you feel that they are being released after they're being authenticated, such as this black triangle, or do you feel that you still need to be very careful in China when evaluating those videos, because it seems that the Chinese government may be also releasing some of them, which is sort of interesting. So we're wondering basically, how controlled is this narrative? And that's one part of my question, but also specifically the black triangle over Shanghai that was seen around the date of the UAP report being released. Do you feel that that's legitimate? And what are your comments on that specific video?
Okay, so I will answer the question about the triangle first, the black triangle in Shanghai. Right now, the self-media is quite popular. People always started their own media to gain popularity. So it can be fake. Sometimes the videos can be fake to just gain popularity. Only by investigating people who have directly experienced this phenomenon can you verify certain things. So only by videos online posted by people you don't know, it's not really enough to verify whether this case is real or not. So in some cases, I do find out some cases turn out to be faked. Some videos are faked to just gain traffic online, to gain popularity. Well, the Chinese government's take of UAP UFOs, actually, I think the same purpose for China to study this as the same as United States and US government, because United States in 1940s, after 1940s, they started to do study on UAP phenomenon because they started to worry about their national security. They wanted to know whether this UFP phenomenon is a very major risk for their national security. It's the same thing for China, but just happened really late in 1990s. China started really relatively late and left far behind compared to United States in this area. So in 1990s, there were lots of UFO or UAP sightings or cases or incidents happened there. That's why Chinese government started only then to started to investigate in these cases. Investigate these cases because they worry that they will pose a very serious national security risk. So it's the same purpose for Chinese government to do this kind of investigation as similar as United States governments. Yeah, that's all. Okay. When I started my investigation in this field, at first I thought most of the contacts were physical contact, but later I realized that more contacts were actually spiritual contact. It's not really physical, it's not face-to-face. So when I started to have contact with Canis Major, Syrian people, I found these kind of experiences turned out to be very beneficial and useful. Back in 1995, in May, the end of May, some people back then, people with abilities, they kind of predicted an earthquake was going to happen in Japan. So I heard that news and I started to contact people from Syria, my spiritual leader, spiritual teacher. And they, back then in January that year already, there's a earthquake already happened in Japan in a city, which caused 5,000 people, 6,000 people dead in a very major earthquake. So I worried a lot. So I asked my spiritual leader some information about earthquakes. So they gave me information about 3 earthquakes, which are like maybe going to happen in Japan later. In May 25th, I got information that May 5th, 25th, Japan in Tokyo, right? Oh, actually, yeah, the one that really happened May 25th in Tokyo, 7.5 magnitude earthquake happened. And also I will send information to them to help, I asked them to transfer some earthquakes to somewhere else to cause less harm. So I believe they have helped me to transfer the earthquake from Japan to Russia, which caused 2,000 people dead. 1 second, it's a series. Okay, so I kind of asked them to help me to transfer to mitigate effects of earthquakes by transferring them, because if it were to happen in Japan, it will cause a lot more deaths, like 80,000 deaths and 200 billion worth of GDP something. So I believe they chose lesser harm by transferring that earthquake to a less populated area. So recently I will also ask information about them, ask information from them about earthquakes that may happen in mainland China or Taiwan or Japan as well. So I will continuously ask them about earthquake information. Yeah, that's how my contact happens.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we are definitely, I mean, Grant is already in the process of reaching out to people in Japan and Korea, and we'd like to continue because these really are voices that need to be heard. And even though we do have the internet, and we all are connected through the internet, that doesn't mean necessarily that all the information reaches everyone. So it is definitely very important to make these connections. So we wanted to ask, well, actually, this is kind of a lighter question here, but just because we were talking about the triangle craft in Shanghai, I'm just noticing that Mr. Zhang has on a very interesting t-shirt. And just for viewers who are listening and not watching, he's got a symbol, a sort of interesting symbol on the front of his t-shirt that is made up of circles and triangles. So I'm making the jump from the triangle craft to the triangles on his t-shirt. But I'm just wondering if he can explain that symbol. Does it have specific meaning for him? And if so, what?
Okay. Oh, he specifically chose this t-shirt for this show, and also he chose other t-shirts as well.
我就选择了这个啊，就是作为给咱们节目做节目的时候穿的这个 T 恤，就是感觉有点意思啊，因为
about t-shirt, it means outstanding in Chinese. The shirt, the translation of shirt means outstanding. So I kind of prepared that. So about Syrian people, Syrian civilization is about 8.6 light years away from Earth. And I guess that they turn to use asteroids to mark some of the disasters that are going to happen. In 1976, I think 4 months between a major earthquake happened in Tangshan. 4 months before that, it's actually 8th of March in Jilin province, the northeastern part of China. That province, there was an asteroid rain happened there. I think it was a sign for me to, they kind of reminded me that something major is going to happen. In 2004, 26th of December, the tsunami, the very major tsunami happened in Indonesia. 300,000 people died in that tsunami. I think 3 months before that, a very big asteroid passed by or crashed into Gansu province. I think passed by Gansu province, or maybe crashed as well. So all these incidents, all these asteroids are like signs given by Syrian people. They specifically gave me signs to alert me of disasters that were going to happen in the future. In 29th of November, I think it's last year, right? And there was another asteroid incident, and it kind of reminded me that 15 or 20 to 25 days later, in the southeastern parts of Japan, another major earthquake was going to happen. I think that Indian boy who is very famous on YouTube, Ananda. I don't know how his Indian name is pronounced. You know, that boy kind of predicted the same thing using the Indian astrology, something like that, but it didn't really happen because I kind of asked Syrian people to mitigate the earthquake or maybe transfer that earthquake to somewhere else. But you know, some people did predict that, same as me. Last year, on 23rd December, another asteroid, a big one, happened in Shanghai province. Is the western part of China, Shanghai Yushu. So what's interesting is that at the crash site, the crashing time is same as my birthday. It's 25th. It's 25th. Oh, sorry, it's 7:25. Yeah, it's 25 past 7 o'clock. In 23rd December. I was actually born in 1969, but the time of that crash is the same as my birthday. So I kind of use these signs to help me to know these incidents beforehand. There were like emails sent by these aliens, these Syrian people, to alert me about incidents ahead of time. So I will later ask them to mitigate some of the disasters. I may even write reports to some government officials. So that's how I get information from aliens. So if you have any questions about these earthquake predictions or my experiences, you can ask any questions.
看看这位女士对这个我联系外星人。
Yeah, sorry, I was muted there. Please continue, Mr. Zhang.
您继续可以说。
我就是看这位女士对我联系外星人，给这个地球，这个转移地震能量减灾的这个事儿，她有什么看法？有什么问题？问了我以后，我会在后边继续给她介绍这方面的情况，就是实践方面的情况。对。
Okay, so yeah, if you have any questions about my efforts on mitigating these like earthquakes and my experiences, you can ask, yeah, any questions.
Yes, we definitely do want to ask. I mean, in particular, you've been mentioning, Mr. Zhang, your investigations and the importance of doing these investigations properly and the importance of them in terms of verifying and authenticating sightings that people have and experiences that people have. So could you please tell us a story, something that you have experienced personally during an investigation? Particularly, we'd really love to hear about a UFO crash that you may have investigated. That would be a really incredible story for our audience to hear. But if you'd rather talk about another one, that's okay too. We're just curious about your experience of investigating. You know, how has that been for you? And have you found that people are willing to talk? Is it a difficult, challenging process to get people to share with you what they have experienced? Or is this something that you're able to do? What is the process like for you? And if you can focus on the UFO crash, that would be wonderful.
Well, of course, there were lots of UFO sightings and experiences, and sometimes they will also use channelers to initiate contact as well throughout my 30 years of investigation and find. I know a lot of cases. The most unique one could be the one case happened in 2017, December 2017. It's actually a soldier in the southern part of China, a veteran. Actually, he's kind of retired right now, but 20 years ago, before actually I kind of interviewed him. 这个您是采访他是2017年，但这个事情发生在2017年前20年，对吧？
对，是1997年夏天。
您1997年。
Okay,
so that happened in 1997 December. It actually happened in Shanxi province, that city. 28th, the soldier used to be a driver, in the military, for the military. So when the summer just started that year, one day there was a heavy rain, and all of a sudden there was a huge bomb. At first he didn't really pay attention to what is going on, but later he went outside to find some toilets on another compounds, and later when he went outside, he saw these two like satellite dishes, two satellite dishes stick together. It's about 3 meters in diameter, and 2 trees. On one of the trees, 2 trees were kind of crashed by certain thing, by UAP, UFO. So on one tree there was a human-looking being, and on another place, in front of the crashed UFO, there was another being, and the being was still alive. And the being was kind of waving to him and saying something he couldn't really understand. The 2 beings were very furry, all over their face and the body, so very furry. And one of the being grabbed his hand, I think the being in front of the flying saucer or the flying, identified flying objects. So the being grabbed his hand very firmly, seemed like the being was trying to get some help. And back then he was only 17 years old. It's a teenager, and this being said something very strange to him. Maybe this being want to get some help, but he just ran away to get help from other soldiers, because back then at that night there were lots of soldiers stationed there, overnight stationed there, and these soldiers went together with him to the site carrying guns. When they saw these flying saucers and 2 beings, they were so terrified and scared, they almost fell to the ground. But they didn't say much things. They just told this soldier, the first guy who saw this flying craft, to back to his room, and so he fell asleep. But didn't know what's going on afterwards.
后边可以提供给你，把这个报告的英文版提供给你啊。
Okay, 好，我先翻译。Actually, this case is not really 100% verified. It's just a story. Because we did have some evidence to kind of prove that, but actually, I think he's more credible, simply because this person, he's a very credible person. This person doesn't seem like a person who lies. And when that happened, it's early in the morning, 3 to 4 o'clock. He heard the car running, some lights were outside. So on the second day, all the soldiers were told to stay inside their dorm, to stay inside to clean their room. They were not allowed to go outside until lunch. So when they go outside, they saw everything gone, and there were 2 trees were there, but the trees were cut off, left on the ground next to the wall, and all this. And then later he asked his leader, in the military, and the leader was so shocked that leader was just realized that this little soldier is just the first witness. He's the first witness to everything. So back then he was only 16 years old, the soldier. He used some connections to join the military, because back then in China, I think still now, 18 years old, you are not only allowed to join the military when you're 18 years old, when you reach 18. But he has some connections. It's one of his relatives pulled some connections to get him into the military, and his relatives told him later to, don't talk about this, because, he warned him not to talk about this, otherwise you will lose your job, because after retirement from the military you can get a very good job, but if you say something very dangerous, you won't. In 2017, that soldier participated or appeared in one of the China's TV shows to talk about the possible existence of aliens, together with other scientists. So all the scientists are having this conventional idea that it's impossible for any beings to travel beyond the speed of light. So that soldier was quite furious. That soldier contacted me to investigate this case, and I post some files about him through certain departments about his credibility. So I did investigate on him. Turned out he's a quite credible person. He was an outstanding soldier, a credited soldier, and also the whole thing, I would say it's a story. It's not really 100% verified, but I did visit his hometown. I visited his military. It's called 28th military. But later that military was kind of degraded into a lower level. I didn't really get any support from the military, of course, but I did visit the site, the crash site, the alleged crash site. And later, I think that place the security around that place is strengthened, maybe because of me. So I'm pretty sure this guy is quite credible. I would say it's like the Roswell incident in China. And I wrote a report about this case, and that report was released in UK. I will later send that link to you. Yeah, that's all.
Wow, obviously this soldier is an incredibly courageous person. And that leads me to another part of this whole topic with regard to witnesses coming forward, people speaking up and being able to be open about these experiences. I'm sure there is just as much stigma in China around this topic as there is in any other country of the world. You know, it's not the most comfortable topic for some people to talk about. So how do these stories get to you, Mr. Zhang? Like how do you find out about these events so that you're able to go and research them? If people are afraid to talk, and obviously there's risk involved for them to come forward and be open about these things, how do you get these stories? How do they arrive in your lab so you can investigate them?
Okay. So I would say that there was actually not really like a very tight limit on report on coverage about the UFO phenomenon from the military part in China, because they often see something very, very strange, and they will report the strange incidents to their superior, to their leaders. They may even get approval to report this to some media, some magazines back then. I would say there wasn't really a huge suppress on media coverage about UFO from the military parts. The most serious case would be a minor punishment, like executive punishment. It's a very minor one, not a major one, on the UFO, on the military personnel if they do report certain things. Back in 1998, in 18th of October, there was a incident happened in Changzhou, a place in the northern part of China, on a Air Force base in China. Above the sky, there was a UFO, and pilots were sent out by the military Air Force to chase these UFO, or one UFO or two UFOs. So the military, there were some people who were responsible for news coverage in the military. There were also soldiers. So they covered this and also report this to a CPC party newspaper. So both inside China and outside China, I think, China is not really suppressing that much about UFO coverage. And also I know this commander from the military, and this commander knows some journalists who cover similar cases before. In 1997 January, in northern part of China, there was an operation called 971 operation, because it happened in January 1997. So the operation is about intercepting UFOs in Zhangjiakou in China. So the military wanted to ambush UFOs because somehow the UFOs always appear there. They wanted to use missiles to intercept these UFOs. And 10 years later, the chief commander of this operation told this on his own media, like self-media online. So you can see that the Chinese government didn't really suppress this coverage that much. Sometimes I report these things to high-level leaders, including President Xi Jinping, though he didn't reply. But you can report this to military leaders all the time, as long as it's not really that top secret, as long as it's not really that recent, because you have to pass certain time window to release information. So as long as you pass that certain time and it's not top secret, you can report this or even report to media. So I don't think the suppressing, Chinese government is not really suppressing that much as people expected, but the worst scenario is I get punishments, minor punishments. That's all.
Okay, so just to clarify, Mr. Zhang is finding the cases that he investigates. He's finding them through sometimes news media or reports that are being released by the military. Is that correct?
就是他想确认一下，您获得这些情报或者说是这个事件知道是通过媒体以及有一些军队的联系告诉您，对吧？
Yeah, because we're curious, like, how do you find out? There must be secrecy, there's definitely stigma. So how do you find these stories so that you know where to go to investigate?
您具体就是怎么知道这些事情，然后以及知道，比如说有个事件发生在哪里啊，然后你才去调查。就比如说这些事情什么时候发生在哪里，你是怎么知道的？就是他想确认一下。
有的是少数是当事人跟我联系的，还有一些是这个因为很多人知道我在从事这方面的就是飞碟外星人的研究工作，有些人呢就会把相关的资料推给我啊，就相关的这个事件啦、资料了推给我，然后呢。 希望我能去做调查。有的呢是通过媒体披露啊，各方面的这个途径都有，多方面的途径都有。
So many ways. There were a few cases where people have experienced these cases, these UFO cases. So they will contact me directly, and there were situations where people who know I'm studying, I'm investigating these cases, so they will tell me about recent cases and ask me to investigate this. And also sometimes I will see some report from media, and then I will investigate myself as well.
Sorry, that's very interesting. Thank you very much. And actually, on that note, very short question, was the UAP report featured on Chinese news media?
Okay, so the media, including the official media in China and also some self-owned media, they kind of warmed up right before the UAP release, UAP report release, to give the public like a certain time to be prepared. So, but I would say there will be a difference between the official media and the self-owned media. So every time, I would say the Chinese media, especially official media, will post everything right away when the United States government release anything. So, but the self-media will just download everything, like the link of the report, and will post the report, even translate that for Chinese audience to know. But the Chinese official media will just won't post any link. They will just say the basic idea, and they will basically follow the conventional way of covering the news, covering anything happen outside China. So they will follow certain rules, a more conventional way to cover that. But other medias will just use their imagination. They will like use more imagination to say whether these are real or not. So they could guess certain narratives or certain like series. But the official media is different. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. And so now I would like to ask you a bit more of a personal question, because you have been a lifelong experiencer, a lifelong contactee yourself, and obviously are very passionate about this topic and very involved, very committed to what you're doing. And you feel very strongly that you have a mission, this is the purpose for you in this life. So I'm curious how your own personal experience, this strong personal belief and experience that you have that is driving you in your life to do this work, how is that perceived by the people who are closest to you in your life, your family, your friends, neighbors? Because you're in a very interesting position where you are in an unconventional position in China, and you are quite open about that. It's not something that you have any shame about. You believe obviously strongly about being open about it, but it is something that's very unconventional. And so yet you are being public in a conservative environment. So how is this seen by your family and your friends, the people that are the closest to you in your life?
Okay. For my friends, well, some of my friends do support me to do research on this, and some other people don't support me. They say that I should focus more on my life, my personal life, my economic situation. For my family members, at first they supported me to devote my time, energy, and money to this area, but later they went against me to do so because I focused too much on this area, on this investigation. Well, it's very important for me to help with this whole situation. First of all, I want to help the Earth to remove some disasters like earthquake, hurricanes, any end of the world scenario. I will record all this data, like predictions and everything. So all the data proved to be, these are quite successful, these measures to mitigate earthquakes and other disasters. So after this interview, when this interview finished, I will go to the northeastern part of China to meet my contacts. I think it's like the channeler to help me to, it's the channeler to help me to contact with the Syrian people, with Canada's major people, about certain cases, about my future possible scenarios of disasters. And back in 2014, the Syrian people also asked me to take a job to establish diplomatic ties between Earth people and them Syrian people. So that's my job to do. That's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to ask one last question.
对，他刚才说就是
So my question for you is coming from Grant. Grant is having some technological issues, as I was mentioning earlier. So I'm kind of speaking on behalf of both of us right now, even though he's here at the interview. He's going to pop in if he can before we finish. So the question coming from Grant is, does Mr. Zhang feel that Chinese scientists may have participated in any back engineering of the UFO technology that they have found? And are any of the crafts that we are seeing actually Chinese technology? Because that, of course, is the rumor, right? The Chinese can say, oh, it's Russian technology or it's United States technology. The US can say the same about China and Russia. There's kind of a blame game going on, each one pointing at each other and saying it could possibly be from that country, even though China and Russia have a collaborative relationship when it comes to the space program. There's still a sort of, denying of any responsibility, and we on the ground have no idea if that's actually the case or not. So I want to rephrase my question. Does he think that that the Chinese government has participated in any back engineering of UFO technology, but also are any of the crafts that we're seeing Chinese technology?
So some official scientists from China, they definitely are doing research on this. Because there were some, I definitely believe that there are some organizations who will study these cases, but as to what level of reverse engineering, I don't really have any source on that. But I do believe, this is very, all the alien cases or the UFO cases are of high value to scientific studies. So I'm only aware that there will be some videos and photos used by the scientists or designated by this, governments to analyze these videos, to ask these scientists to study these videos and photos. So I don't really know whether there are some reverse engineering or not, but I do believe, other governments are very clever, definitely will use this to study the technology side and improve their technology. That's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So we don't want to take up too much of your time. And usually at the end of an interview, we've been the one asking all the questions. In this case, it's been me asking all the questions. So I wanted to give Mr. Zhang the opportunity to share, just before we say goodbye and thank you, the opportunity to share anything that he would like to share, an experience, a story, a message that maybe he'd like the audience to hear, anything about his research or his investigations, anything he would like to share that he feels he'd like to express right now. We just want to give him the opportunity to do that before we say goodnight.
He doesn't know about your name. It's yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself to Mr. Zhang?
I'm sorry, say that again. I missed
that.
Yeah,
he doesn't know. Yeah, he wants to know about like you, how do you pronounce your name? Because I think he received the email, but he didn't really read any English or know anything about you. Sorry, but I should introduce more.
Well, it's very kind of him to ask, so say thank you. So my name is Sinead. It's like the Irish singer Sinead O'Connor, if he's heard of her. That's how you say my name. So my family is Irish. I'm the first Canadian in my family, actually. And I'm a lifelong experiencer also, and became an assistant to Grant about 1.5 years ago. We met through a series of synchronicities, and it became obvious that we were meant to work together. So I also feel that this is the reason why I'm here. I feel like I finally have woken up to my purpose in this lifetime, just like you do, Mr. Zhang. And so I share your passion and your belief in how important it is to do this work and to share this message. And that's why I'm doing this with Grant.
Okay, thank you, Sinead, and thank you, Grant, for giving me this opportunity. It's good that we communicate about the progress worldwide, and also it's this topic is about technology and cultural progress as well. And I'm working on like mitigating the harm on humankind, including some disasters and COVID, and also another job of mine is to serve as a diplomatic ambassador to improve the relationship between humans and aliens. So it's good to talk, and thank you guys.
Oh, it's such an honor to have you here. You know, we just think that your work is absolutely amazing, and you know, we really admire your passion and your commitment and your courage because, again, you know, regardless of where you are in the country, it's a very stigmatized topic still. You know, a lot of people are still very uncomfortable with it. So we really commend your openness and your commitment. It must be a really shining example for other Chinese people. And I think that your work must be giving them a lot of hope. Thank you so much. And Amy, I just want
to say
you were absolutely, Amy, you were absolutely amazing. You were amazing. Your translation was incredible.
Thank you.
And I want to just say to the audience.
I'm so happy.
Oh, really? Thank you. I mean, I want to say that you translated the very first exopolitics conference in China. I just want to recognize that as a major achievement. So thank you for the amazing translation job you did. And we're very much looking forward to interviewing you as well, which will be coming up in a week or two. So thank you again, Mr. Zhang, so much for coming and sharing with us your wisdom and your experience. We really appreciate it.
Can I just add one thing?
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Grant.
Yes, I just wanted to add my thanks to Mr. Zhang for being an ambassador from China to spread the message so that people here know what's going on inside China rather than hearing rumors and stuff like that. We really appreciate it. You are going to do some interviews. Maybe we can sort of stay in contact if you want to interview Sinead and I. And if you talk with Mr. Zhang, if you at any point want to interview somebody in America, I know most of the researchers. If you want to do an interview that you think that China would be interested in hearing, I'm willing to help you. And I had a question. Mr. Zhang talked about writing an article for Britain. Has he considered doing a book on his experiences? And if so, we would want to maybe try to help him to get his message out to America.
那就是首先这个张老师啊，他是非常感谢你啊，作为中国的这样一个代表的大使吧，等于说是把中国的信息传递出去。因为在此之前，大家听到的都是一些传闻啊，就没有一些真实的这个消息。另外就是说，您以后啊，如果想要采访，就是今天这两位就是采访者，你想采访他们的话，或者说你想采访任何在美国做这方面研究的话，然后 Grant 他说他也愿意帮助您，就是介绍去采访这些人。然后另外你刚才说到你在英国是发表了一个报告，对吧？然后以后你要是如果写书的话呢，他也可以帮您这边，比如说在美国去让更多的美国观众知道啊，是这样子的信息。
多谢多谢 ，Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much again, and thank you to Sinead for a wonderful interview. It was very well done, and I'm so impressed with the translation. It's very clear.
My honor.
Do you do it for a living? Do you translate for a living?
I used to be a translator, but now I changed my job to I manage like social media for certain companies, like TikTok, Facebook, everything. Yeah, so I kind of changed my job.
Wonderful. Thank you again, and it's been an honor to speak, and we'll speak again next weekend or on the 25th, whenever that is. And thank you again to Sinead for a wonderful interview.